plan. Imagine this. 1 minute, you're healthy, fit, a professional woman. The next, you're near death, burnt and broken following an horrific accident. Kirsten Moriarty was a journalist and experienced skydiver. In 2010, while skydiving, something went horribly wrong and she collided with high voltage lines. Doctors told her family and friends she would lose both legs and never walk again. How do you come back from such a traumatic experience? Kirsten has written a book about her experience, From Dark Days to Blue Skies. She's now a councillor on the Somerset Regional Council and will be launching her book later this year. Good morning, how are you?
Good morning.
Do you remember that day when, or do your friends tell you of that day when they said you will lose both legs and never walk again?
Yes, my injuries were so severe from the accident. I was in intensive care for about 5 days, and that wasn't information I was made aware of until I was actually at a stage they moved me into the acute burns ward at the Royal Brisbane and Women's Hospital.
Go back to that day. What went wrong?
Well, it was basically we climbed out of the plane a little bit late. And when I opened my parachute, the jump was fine up until that point. And when I opened my parachute, I looked, and the top winds were quite strong also. And so I realised I wasn't going to make it back to the drop zone. What I was doing was looking for an alternative area to land and obviously looking for nice, clear, open paddock. I never saw the power lines.
So you literally just didn't see them?
No, they were impossible to see. From where I was, there's some sort of indication. There's something on the poles, or just even the alignment of the poles. I could see there were power lines running down the side of the road, but there was no indication that there was another set of lines.
Do you remember hitting them?
Look, it all happened in a split second, so not really. And it was only when I was hanging under them looking up that I realised what had happened.
So you woke up or, regained perhaps full consciousness is probably the term.
Came back to life is probably the term. I mean, my heart would have stopped when the current stopped flowing through me. It was lucky I was not connected to them anymore, and my heart started beating again. And, so when I came to, that was my situation. I was hanging under the set of power lines.
How long were you hanging there for?
It was an hour and 50 minutes all up before they were able to get a rescue crew up to reach me.
And what was your condition?
I was severely burnt. I'd been electrocuted 11,000 volts. But while I was actually hanging under there, my brain had sort of shut down the pain receptors. I couldn't feel the pain from the burns at the time.
And when you went into surgery, what were the long-term potential implications at that point?
Oh, look, it was incredibly serious. And basically, my friends and family were told I would lose my legs, that I'd never walk again, that I likely had brain damage and internal injuries as well, which they can't do anything about with electrical burns. So if there had been permanent damage to my heart or kidneys, I probably wouldn't still be here.
And what injuries do you still live with today?
Well, just a few scars, actually. And obviously there's been some intensive physiotherapy because with full-thickness burns, electricity burns not just through every layer of your skin, but also through the muscle. So, yes, it was some very intense physiotherapy to train what I had left to take over to do those jobs.
So you don't feel any different as far as your physical ability today?
A little bit less strength, I suppose, in my legs would be the only long-term effect that has stayed with me, which is just incredibly lucky.
And what's life like today?
Life is fantastic. Life is better than ever before. It's obviously been such a journey through this process. It's been over 3 years now since the accident. And, it just changes everything. To go from not being able to, I was trapped in a bed, and I couldn't move, I couldn't lift my neck, I couldn't move my arms to feed myself. So and, obviously couldn't walk. And so to go from that to being back to where I am today, I'm just so incredibly grateful.
Does it change relationships between friends and family, and a trauma like that?
Well, we were always close, but now we're incredibly closer. My father features very strongly in the book because he was just so amazing. He walked into intensive care 2 days after the accident, and he didn't leave me for 6 months until I had recovered. And everything he did was about making that journey I had to go through much easier. And yes, so we're closer. And I think you're also something like that makes you so much more grateful. So we tell each other that we love each other more and things. And I guess that would be one of my messages: don't take those people in your life for granted.
I've also heard that when a major trauma happens, certainly a near-death experience, that sometimes friends don't know what to say, so they tend to go by the wayside, some of them.
Well, I suppose, I guess it shows when you come through something like that and who's still standing by your side. They're the ones that are just absolutely invaluable.
Why did you decide to write a book?
When I was in hospital, I read a lot of real-life stories about people overcoming very difficult and traumatic experiences, and I found them incredibly inspirational, and I still do. And I thought that I had something to offer in terms of inspiring people about what our strengths and our possibilities are, and also the power of a positive attitude and that belief in yourself.
You're listening to Belinda Sanders on ABC Southern Queensland. I'm currently speaking to Kirsten Moriarty. She's a councillor on the Somerset Regional Council, but you might not know that she collided with high voltage power lines after a routine skydive. What got you into skydiving in the first place, Kirsten?
I went and did a tandem jump with some friends, and it was actually at a sports drop zone down in Victoria, and so I was watching them all while I was waiting to go up, and I'm looking at them and I'm thinking they're having the time of their lives. And, before your first tandem jump, I was a bit nervous and things, but once I did it, I realised this is just the most fantastic feeling. And when I landed, they said, "So do you want to learn how to do it?" And I said, "Yes."
What does your family think about the fact that after what happened with that skydiving accident, you're still skydiving today?
It's quite funny, actually, because a lot of people ask Dad. Dad actually came with me on one of my first jumps back and did a tandem skydive, and he said he would never do it. I obviously had to go to very extreme lengths to get him to jump with me. But what he said when people asked him, how can you let her do that again or support her in doing that again, is that that's a part of who I am, and he had no intention of trying to crush my spirit.
And you've never thought that you don't want to skydive again?
No, it was actually having something I'm so passionate about was really a strong motivation when I was in hospital working through my rehabilitation, because I knew how physically strong and demanding the sport I had to be to do the sport. So I knew I had to get myself back as strong as possible. And when they were saying to me, you'll never walk again, I was looking at them and I was thinking, and I said to them, of course I'm going to walk again, and I'm going to skydive again.
Considering your legs could have been lost, that you'll lose both your legs and you'd be in a wheelchair, are they okay today?
Yes. Yes.
Obviously one has to wonder, if you can go from both legs to running around being normal. Like, it seems quite odd that the one extreme to the other.
Yes, well, the real concern was the amount of muscle I lost from, particularly about my thighs, but also around my ankles. And so it was a very long journey back to, I remember the first time I got out of bed, and it was just so painful. I had 2 people helping me just to make it into the bathroom, and I knew I had a long way to go from there. But yeah, it's amazing. I'm just, I can do anything I want to do still.
When you look in the mirror today, has your perception as a result of this journey and the recovery, has the perception of yourself, what you see in that mirror, changed?
I guess if I had to say anything, it's changed more for the positive. I look and I just see this incredible strength and determination and what's brought me through it. So there's a few scars, but, you know, we always joke that chicks dig scars.
And what are your thoughts on death today?
Look, I mean, it's something that's going to happen to all of us. I guess if I'd ever thought about it, it was, you know, something a long way in the future that, that happened to other people, I suppose. But no, I guess when the time comes, that's our job, isn't it, to go into it gracefully.
When you skydive today, do you take things a little bit differently to what you did in the past, or was that just a pure accident?
It was just a really freak accident, and I've had people say to me, oh, I'd never do it now, and I think don't let that put you off. If you've been thinking about going and doing a tandem jump or even taking up the sport, it's really statistically very safe, and that was just an incredibly unlucky accident.
Why did you want to become a counsellor?
Well, it's been quite a journey, obviously. I've been through, there was my physical recovery and then also my emotional recovery. Where I live in the Somerset region, I had worked as a journalist before my accident, and it was amazing. Everybody whose paths I'd ever crossed sent me letters and cards when I was in hospital. I had them all up on the wall at the end of the bed. And those positive messages were one of the really lovely things helping me get through it. And it made me realise we've got something very, very special out here in our sense of community. So there was a strong desire to give something back.
And do you intend to stay in that position for a long period of time?
Well, obviously, that's for the community to decide every 4 years. I've got another 2, and it is a very strong service role, and it's challenging. It's probably the most challenging thing I've ever done. But yes, if they'll have me, I'll stay.
You called the book From Dark Days to Blue Skies. What do you think your darkest day was?
Oh, look, there are a few of those. I suppose it's, I think it goes back to, again, that power of the mind. And really, it wasn't any particular awful physical day that stands out. It's the days that if you let yourself lose hope or move into fear or worry, instead of just being grateful for what you have at the time and just taking it one day at a time. So it's really up to us. We have a lot of influence over whether our days are dark or hopeful.
What was the most, or is the most common question that people ask you about this event in your life?
It's probably how did it happen. I think, just trying to understand just how impossible those lines were to see. And, if I'd even seen them at the last minute, I could have avoided them. But it was just, I think why such a freak accident?
I suppose that is difficult to understand, because when you're on the ground, power lines are quite clear. You can see them quite clearly.
Yes, it had been, we'd had a really long dry season up to that point, so it didn't help that the grass in the paddock was, really brown and they were blending in, but they also were quite fine lines, and it would have been easily a kilometre from where they came off these lines to where they went, and usually there's some indication, there's posts every few metres, so there's usually something there to give you a sign that they're there.
Have you met other people who have been electrocuted or burnt as a result of your experience?
There were a few fellow burns victims in the hospital physiotherapy gym. I haven't met anyone who's been electrocuted in the way I was, and what we were told in the hospital was that it's firstly very, very rare to survive it. Secondly, anybody that they had treated who had survived it had lost limbs.
Has it been explained to you why you survived it? Why you have been that rare person?
Look, I think it was an absolute miracle, and certainly the Energex spokesman that the media was contacting after the event, a lot of misinformation came because he was saying my parachute had hit the lines first, because I think in his knowledge there was no way, if my body had hit the lines first, how I could still be here. But I think probably just because my legs hit the first two lines, and Earth, like, it was all split second, but they hit the first two lines. By the time my chest hit the third line, it was only probably a few milliseconds of current, which was actually enough to burn all of that muscle and skin down to the bone. Any few milliseconds longer, I would not be here.
So if you describe it as miraculous, do you have faith? Religious faith?
I do. Something like this obviously changes you. I do believe that there was a reason that I survived that, and that's why I strive each day to make the most of it and to do the best I can for the community out here.
Have you worked out that exact reason yet?
I feel like I'm on the right path, and look, I think it's just to try, and possibly that's part of the reason for writing the book too, to let other people know, you know, if I can survive something that awful, you know, with faith and hope, you can move through those difficulties in your life and find much happier days again.
Kirsten, thank you very much for talking to me this morning.
Thank you.
The launch of that book, From Dark Days to Blue Skies, will be held at the Somerset Civic Centre in Esk on the 28th of November from 6 o'clock. If you want to know more, I suggest you contact the council. You can visit Kirsten Moriarty's website as well. From Dark Days to Blue Skies is the book. You're listening to Belinda Sanders on ABC Southern Queensland.